Today on the Sartorial Chef, it's a classic Sunday dinner, starting off with my homemade mini meatloaf muffins. Then it's a homemade 5-ingredient dinner roll recipe that's sure to please. And to round out the meal, we've got some fresh beans straight out of the garden, some homemade smashed potatoes, and my signature tomato gravy. So why don't you pull up a chair and dine with me?
Sartorial Chef here, and we are fixing a classic Sunday dinner here. I'm going to begin with my meatloaf. Now here's the thing about meatloaf. It takes like 2.5 hours. You have to pretty much know ahead of time you're making it and have everything set out. And I thought, there's got to be a better way to do this. So I came up with these little mini meatloaf muffins. Everybody gets their own little meatloaf, and they only take about 45 minutes. So to begin, I have about 1.5 pounds of ground beef in here. This is 73.27. Now to that, I'm going to add some pork sausage, and this is a smokehouse variety. So it's going to add just another layer of flavor here. Now I know a lot of times meatloaf is like ground pork and ground beef, but I like the sausage. It's just gives it something a little different, adds a little kick to it. And to this, I just need 1 egg. I'm just going to drop that right in. Make sure we watch for eggshells. Wipe my hands off here. Now for the seasonings. A little salt. A little pepper. One of my go-tos, garlic powder. I just kind of season to taste, but we're doing about 2 tablespoons. I've got some chopped onions here. You can use fresh onions, but I like using the chopped. They're a little more finely minced, and they're kind of dry. They're like a dehydrated onion, so they'll absorb some of the liquid and the mixture, and they'll get nice and plump and juicy in the oven. So I'm going to do maybe about a 1/4 cup of that. Got some ground sage here. Now sage is pretty strong, so we're just going to do a few teaspoons of that. You don't need too much sage. Plus the sausage has a little sage in it as well. Some hot sauce. Just a few dashes of that, just to give it a little kick. Worcestershire. This is going to really bring all the flavors together. And I'm going to do a few tablespoons of that. And just a little more there. Okay. Breadcrumbs. This is what's going to help hold everything together. I usually do about a cup and a half, which is about what's left in this container here. You can use any kind of breadcrumbs you like. Sometimes I like to use panko, or you can do like an Italian seasoned blend, just whatever you like. And lastly, just a splash of milk. And that's just going to keep everything from drying out when it's in the oven. Then we're just going to come in here with clean hands and mix everything together. Make sure you get the egg well incorporated everywhere, because that's going to work with the breadcrumbs here to help bind everything. And meatloaf is one of my favorite dishes. One of my father's favorite dishes too. He loves when I make my meatloaf for him. I don't always have time, the extra 2.5 hours, and I was just playing around in the kitchen one day, and I thought, why not do a little mini version, see how that turns out. So we have got our mixture made up here. Now I'm going to grab my pans here. I've got just a couple of my muffin tins, and I have pre-greased those. And we're just going to take a little bit of our mixture here. You can make these as big or as small as you want. These work good as like meatballs too. If you want to do kind of like a sandwich or something and just kind of fry it up. But I'm going to do about, not quite baseball size, just a little smaller than that. And we're just going to line our pan here with these delicious mini meatloafs. Now this mixture here, depending on how big you make them, should yield about 10 to 12. You can either serve this family style if you've got a large gathering for dinner, or sometimes I like to just take, I'll have some as they're ready, and then the rest I'll pop away for another time. And here's another little trick of mine. I've just got a stick of cold butter here, and it has to be cold butter. And what I do, I'm just going to slice a little pad here, not much, maybe about a 1/8 inch thick, if that even. And I'm going to poke that right on top. Now what this is going to do, cold butter, it has a higher melting temperature than room temperature butter. So as this slowly goes in the oven, this butter is going to slowly melt on top, and it is going to create a nice golden brown crust on the top of our meatloaf, which is just going to add another layer of flavor. And you guys know I'm all about layers of flavor. We're only going to use half the stick. And there we go. Those are my mini meatloaf muffins. They're ready to go in the oven, which I have preheated to 375 degrees. And these are going to cook for about 35 to 40 minutes, give or take, depending on how hot your oven is. Of course, we're going to look for that golden number 155. So I've got those in, and next we will start on the side dishes. Okay, so our mini meatloafs are in the oven. And nothing goes better with meatloaf than mashed potatoes. I mean, that's classic, right? So I've got about 7 potatoes here that I have just rinsed off. And I'm going to plop them in my water here. Now this is just cold water. What I like to do is I like to start my potatoes in cold water and then slowly bring them to a boil, because that is going to cook our potatoes more evenly. So I'm just going to turn this on medium heat here. What you want to do, you want to bring your potatoes to a boil and then reduce them to simmer. They're going to simmer for about 5 minutes, and they should be fork tender. Of course, we're going to test them first. Now while that's going, I'm going to move on to my homemade dinner rolls. I feel like the Sunday dinner needs some kind of bread with it, you know. This is a really simple dinner roll recipe that does not involve yeast. I know a lot of people, when it comes to the rolls, they're like, I don't feel like getting the yeast out and waiting for things to rise, and you know, blah, blah, blah. So here is a really simple recipe for rolls. And it is just going to be 2 cups of flour. Now when you're measuring flour, you want to try not to pack it down, because the flour will compress, and then you're going to end up with more flour than you actually need. So I just kind of like gently spoon it in here. And that is 2 cups. The rest of our dry ingredients. A couple tablespoons of salt. While I'm at it, I'm just going to add a little salt to our potatoes here, just to give it a little layer of flavor. To that, we are also going to need 2 teaspoons of baking powder. And this is what's going to get our rolls to rise, get nice and fluffy on us. Okay, and that is it for the dry ingredients. Now onto the wet. 4 tablespoons of mayonnaise. The mayonnaise provides a nice little bit of fat, but it is going to really help things come together in the oven. And 4. Okay, and lastly, a cup of milk. And this is really simple, guys, just a 5-ingredient roll recipe. I like to keep it as simple as I can in the kitchen without sacrificing flavor. And I'm just going to grab my trusty whisk here, and we're going to stir this up. Now what you want to do, you want to kind of fold this. You don't want to mix it too hard because that's going to work the gluten in your flour, and then you're going to end up... Okay guys, that is mixed pretty well. So I'm just going to grab a little spoon here, and we're going to spoon just a little dollop of this into our muffin pan. I'm just going to fill it up about halfway here. Just a nice, generous dollop here. And this recipe, depending on how big you make your rolls, you're going to get about 10 to 12 rolls out of this. They are going to cook about 12 to 15 minutes depending on your oven. And you can hear that meatloaf now. It is sizzling away good. Smelling really good. Okay guys, on to the rest of our meal here. I like to have a green vegetable to go with a starch with potatoes, just to something a little healthier. So I've got some Blue Lake green beans here. And these are just green beans from out of my garden that I have canned. What's great about this is you can just grab them out of your cellar whenever you're ready to go. And I'm just draining the liquid off of those. I'm going to dump those right into a saucepan here. These will not take long to cook, so I'm not going to start them yet. I'm just going to kind of let them go. And to the beans, I do just a little salt, a little pepper, just a little smidge of sugar, not much, just a smidge, and of course some butter. The butter's going to help these from sticking in the pan. Doesn't take much. And to go with our potatoes and with our meat, I'm going to be making my signature tomato gravy. For the tomato gravy, another one of my hacks here, can of tomato soup. This is great because it's already the consistency we need. And it has a rich concentrated tomato flavor, which is really going to work well here for our gravy. Now to that, I'm going to add about a half cup of beef stock. You can use any kind of stock you like, but when I'm having like a roast or I'm doing like meatloaf, something like that, I like to use beef stock. And then we're going to do a few dashes of Worcestershire. That's going to add some flavor. It's also going to add a nice color. And then of course salt, pepper, garlic. A teaspoon of garlic. A teaspoon of onion powder. And just a little pinch of brown sugar. Not much, just a generous handful. Knock my hands off there. And then we're just going to give this a nice whisk. I've got this on a low heat. I don't want it too high because we still have a generous bit of time left on our meatloaf here, about 20 minutes. This is just going to be enough time for all the flavors to kind of cook down and meld together. I'm just going to let that go. When we return, we'll be pulling my rolls out of the oven and finishing up the rest of our meal. Okay guys, our rolls are ready to come out of the oven. I've already got a cooling rack set up here. It's important to, anytime you're baking anything, you want to kind of elevate it when you're cooling it off because you want to let air get underneath, and that's going to help these come out of the pan. We've got about 10 minutes left on our meat. I've just got the beans going on a really low heat here. Our gravy is coming together nicely. Okay, I have got my trusty thermometer here, and we're just going to check into our meatloaf here. Ground beef, you want about 155 to 165. You don't want to go further than that or it's going to dry out. And we are just at 155. So I'm going to let those rest. I'm going to turn our oven off, and I'm just going to let those rest in there for a minute while I finish the rest of our meal. Our gravy is ready. I'm just going to set that aside. We've got our beans here. Now, if you're cooking for like a large group, I like to serve table side, family style. So I'll just get like some bowls and portion out everything, and then everybody can kind of serve themselves at the table. But it's just me right now. I'm just going to take these rolls out. They look good, you guys. They fluffed up nicely for us. We got a little color on there. And you can variate this recipe any way you want. You can always, you can add different herbs, spices, cheese, things like that, and just kind of turn this into something else. Make it your own, you know, have fun with it. But I thought with this meal I would just do like a basic roll for us. And yeah, feel free to share that recipe and kind of do your own thing with it. Now the potatoes. I'm going to give them a little poke here. And they are knife tender. If your knife goes in easily and comes out easily, then you know they are ready to go. So I'm going to turn those off. I've got a strainer here. We're just going to take these potatoes over, and we're going to drain the water. Now I like smashed potatoes myself. I like leaving the skin on and just kind of going at it with the potato masher. And I just, I like to leave the skin on if it's a light skin. I feel like it adds nice texture to the potatoes. To these potatoes, we're going to need a lot of butter here. I've got about a half a stick. And we're going to add a splash of milk. And you may need to add as you go. It just depends. And then we're going to season these, of course, with some salt and pepper. I salted the water earlier, but we're going to add a little more salt now. And then also just a little oil. I've got my potato masher here, and we're just going to go in and we're just going to break down these potatoes. Alright. Once we've got those mashed up good, we're going to give them a whisk. And just as I suspected, we are going to need a little more milk. Sometimes you never know until you just get in there with it. Okay guys, our potatoes are looking good. I'm going to pull those aside. I've got a spoon here for my potatoes, and I've got a ladle here for my gravy. Now we're going to pull out my little mini meatloafs. And those are looking amazing, guys. As you can see, they have got a nice caramelization on them. That fat from the butter is rendered nicely and created a beautiful crust. Now, of course, I'll never be able to eat all these myself. I'm just going to have a couple for now. And the rest, you can either plop away in the freezer for another time, or you can store them in the fridge. They just take a few minutes in the microwave, you're good to go. So it's, you know, a really simple make-ahead meal. The ground beef, sometimes you can find it on sale. I mean, 10 to 12 bucks depending on how many pounds you get. The roll of sausage, so it's a pretty inexpensive meal. So I'm just going to go ahead and plate up here. I'm going to get a nice dollop of potatoes here. And I like to make a little well for the gravy. And I know some people are weird about lumpy potatoes. I like lumpy potatoes. I like a little texture in them. It just kind of gives it something different. And I'm just going to pull one of these guys out here. I think I'm going to have two. Okay. Some beans. And these are good beans, guys. These are fresh out of the garden. I'm just going to get a couple spoonfuls of beans here. And my gravy. I'm going to ladle some gravy on the potatoes. I'm going to ladle some on my meat. And I know a lot of people, they just squirt ketchup on top. I feel like that's old school. It reminds me of like school cafeteria. So I like to try something different. I thought, why not a tomato gravy? So let's dig in. Okay, I'll try these potatoes first. These are good, you guys. Just the right consistency. Not too lumpy, just gives a little texture to it. The gravy is great. You get the tomato and the beef and the Worcestershire, gives it a nice earthy note. Just a hint of sweetness from the brown sugar. And I don't know if you guys can see here, it is cooked through. It is nice and moist and juicy. Just perfect. Now, if I were serving these rolls at the table, I would just like butter them with something, but since it's just me, I'm just going to have one little roll here. And I just like to take the roll and just kind of soak up some of this gravy with it. And this is just a really basic roll recipe. Nice texture on the outside, nice and soft on the inside. And like I said, it's a very versatile recipe. You can do a lot of things with it. Try a little of the beans here. Even though these are canned, you can still taste the freshness. Just a little salt, butter, pepper, a little bit of sugar. All you need. So that is a Sunday dinner from the Sartorio Chef.